score vitiligo. Otherwise, many times there are other ways that people score vitiligo. Sometimes they score it by picking a few target areas. So rather than looking at the entire surface area involved, they'll just look at, the response of the elbows or something along those lines. So, that's another way to score vitiligo. But ultimately the body surface area score is certainly a good one, but a little bit hard to reproduce. It's hard to work with.
Okay. So in case of segmental versus non-segmental, is it based upon the genetic findings and autoimmune disease? So doctor, based on the vitiligo pathology, so there are more hypotheses have been seen in terms of it is an autoimmune disease. Can you tell major steps that is involved in the vitiligo pathogenesis?
So the vitiligo pathogenesis is not an easy one. It tends to be a little bit complex. And it appears that it's not yet fully understood. And that may be a particular reason why we don't have targeted treatment targeted treatments yet for disease. But it appears that there are 3 or 4 different issues. The first is the individual who develops vitiligo. For some of those individuals, they have polymorphisms in their pigment genes that allow them to become more recognized by cells. So there's something a little bit unusual about the sequence of their genes that allow them to produce an immune reaction to start with. So that's the first issue. Second issue is that many people with vitiligo are more prone to producing antibodies against cells. So these individuals have genes that are associated with production of autoimmune reactions, whether they be T cell or B cell type reactions. And then there are even natural killer cell or innate immune changes in the immune system that contribute. And then the next step is that we have, for some individuals, a poor processing of antioxidant vitamins. That's not always genetic. Some of that is just, from local buildup. Some of it is from abnormalities and some in genes that allow for a high level of pro-oxidative damage. And the last is that there's some recent data, and it's not clear to what extent that's of consequence on certain kinds of T cell regulatory genes like CXCL10. These are
okay.
Seem to be important in the regulation of disease. Again, there's been a lot of emphasis. There's constantly changing emphasis on what the pathogenesis is, and I think some of the problem is that it is a complex pathogenesis, and we're still waiting to see good models of whether some of these issues with pathogenesis, and I think that'll come out in the next 10 years, but we're waiting to see whether some of these issues with pathogenesis are induced by other issues within the disease or whether they're primary to the illness. And that's the problem with the disease. We don't have a single pathway. There's so many genes involved. And some of these genes overlap with rheumatoid arthritis, and some of them overlap with atopic dermatitis, and some of them overlap with alopecia areata, and some of them overlap with autoimmune colitis. And as a result, we've developed some interest in some medications that are used to treat these other illnesses.
Okay. So can we tell that